Namaste. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Anamkara meditation program. With all my heart, with all my love, I welcome to our program this evening. And great you're able to join us. And, you bring your divine essence, the power of your presence, and the power of your practice and your commitment to practice. So you bring that into this boundless space of consciousness that holds us all and actually unites us all. So though we may seem to be in different parts of the country or the world, here we are in that one field of consciousness, inseparable. So thank you for joining us this evening and bringing the fullness of your being to us all. And we start out by really invoking, the highest aspiration, the highest intentions behind our practices. Because this is a satsang, keeping the company of the truth. Well, the truth is the highest. The truth is the infinite, the divine, the essence of who we are. And our highest intention in practice is to know that completely, both because it is the way to relieve all suffering for ourselves, but it's also the way to relieve the suffering of all beings. So our commitment is really that expansive, to set ourselves free and to set all beings free. And all beings, meaning all beings, throughout time, throughout space, through all different planes of existences, all beings on this planet and beyond. So we have that largeness, that greatness of heart that matches the truth of who we are, because the true essence of who we are is infinite, boundless. So that infinitude of being is already embracing and holding all. So our intention behind our practices is to know that, to revel in that. It sets us free and empowers us to walk that state into the world, to support others becoming free, and to, in that sense, realize our own Buddha nature. And like Buddha was committed to being able to know how to end suffering and end the suffering of all beings. Well, it has to do with being able to access and know the boundless state of being. That state which is already present, already inherent to each and every one of us. So our practices are really aimed at knowing that and sidestepping the obstacle. Oh, the obstacle is the mind. So really all the practices, it keeps coming back to, they're aimed at, what do we do with this mind? And especially, in some ways, it's not even the mind. It's our identification with the mind. So yes, we transform the mind along the way so that it can serve as a vehicle of our highest nature. Because we see, even in ordinary ways, we have an intention to be kind and patient and compassionate. And then the mind gets in the way and we get impatient, we get unkind, we lack compassion. So the mind is really what we have to work with in order to transform it so that it becomes the clear conduit of the truth of who we are at all times, in all places. Because that truth is unchanging. That's what the ancient yogis meant by sat, the truth. The truth is that which is the same at all times in all places. That truth is the boundless nature of consciousness, the boundless, all-embracing, compassionate, loving, kind nature of consciousness itself. So our practices are aimed at that. Our intention is to know that. We bring that to our practice so that we are engaging in practice with that sense of reverence, that sense of even awe at what can unfold in a simple practice like contemplation, as we think about and contemplate what we'll be going over in some of the teachings and writings today, as we go into meditation, what can unfold in any moment. Oh, the light of the infinite, the revelation of the truth of who we are. Just as soon as the mind gets even a little out of the way, that light comes flooding in. So that's why we're here, and that's what we bring to this evening in terms of that kind of intention. And these days, There's so much going on that's so painful in the world. So obviously we want to get free of suffering ourselves, and we want to help all beings become free of suffering on all different levels. So it's not just, attaining an exalted state and we'll be able to someday be like a Buddha walking through the world. It's also, how do we fulfill our dharma in this world, in this life, in the simple actions that connect us to other beings, that help us to stand for the truth, to stand for dharma at this time when dharma is at its lowest ebb and is so challenging for people to deal with individuals, governments, all the things that are going on in this world. And those dynamics of the world, they invoke various levels of and kinds of identities. Are we a fighter? Are we fearful? Are we any number of things that come through the feelings and the thoughts and the actions that are reactions to what we're perceiving in the world. And that's the nature of mind. It is reactive in that way. Part of what the meditative practices do is help us to change the reactivity of the mind. And that shows up, not just in some mystical way, but very clearly, part of my background in the neurosciences and working with people clinically was to see that meditation dramatically changes what goes on in the brain. It goes on with the subcortical areas of the brain related to the fight, flight, and freeze response. And that the breathing, the making use of mantra, these change our physiology and our neurophysiology so that we can be steadier, we can be calmer, we can be less reactive. We can have what in the neurosciences would be called our left frontal lobe, the part of the brain that's connected to or related to higher order thinking and being able to see clearly and act from a place of wisdom and not just reactivity, because that's where that subcortical region of the brain, the amygdala, takes over with impulsivity and reactivity. So our practices are multifaceted. They impact us on many different levels. And everything from changing our physiology, changing our brain, but also opening up insight, helping us to see, who and what are we beyond the confines of the ordinary mind. So that even as we're doing our practices, those practices are empowering us to refine the instrument of mind and body to be at better service of our highest nature and be able to carry out those loving, kind impulses. So all this is happening simultaneously on all these different levels, and that's how the power of practice, what we would call, especially in the yoga tradition, Shakti. It's the power of consciousness. The practices arise from that, are empowered by that, and that's the root nature of that consciousness. Well, that's boundless. That's why it can cut through the mind in a moment and bring these certain, vast experiences of being clear and free of the mind. And it's showing us that, that's our real nature. Then the mind kind of closes in, we do more practices to be able to sustain it, to be able to expand it, to be able to have it stay with us throughout activities, throughout the day, throughout the night, really through all states of ordinary mind, waking, dream, and deep sleep state. So through meditative practice, we can become aware of that boundless nature of our consciousness that is always present, even while the mind and body are acting, speaking, perceiving. What holds all of that is this boundless field of awareness, of consciousness. It's the same consciousness that illuminates our dreams when we're in sleep, that illuminates the experience of deep sleep, where there's just nothingness. But that awareness is present, showing us nothingness. The continuous awareness of nothingness is deep sleep. The transcendent state, also known as Turiya, that transcends and subsumes the ordinary three states, well, that's what we access through more and more practice and more refinement, both of the mind and developing the capacity to be steady in the stillness and in the silence. And part of that grows out of being able to know more and more clearly who we are, that we're not just the reactive mind and the roles that we play and all the things that the world is invoking right now, that can bring up the fear response, bring up the anger and aggression responses. Even when those are sort of appropriate to the situation, we need to know who are we beyond that, and how can we dampen those in the sense of when we know the truth of who we are, we're not so reactive, and that empowers us to remain wise, to remain clear, to remain patient, to even in our steadiness of being present, that we're not rocked by what's going on in the world because we have steady wisdom. But that steady wisdom comes from knowing the truth of who we are beyond all those roles and all the reactive aspects of the mind. So our practices are aimed at bringing us into that more and more, so we get a sense of what that fullness is. So along those lines, I wanted to share something from Oh My Beloved. Oh My Beloved was a collection of writings received in meditation that came out a couple of years ago. And this one, you'll see, it helps to invoke that truth of who we are beyond the ordinary mind. Because we know the ordinary mind and its identities very well. How it identifies with the condition of our body, the state of our emotions, the reactions to this person or that person. We're very familiar with that, right? So we need a reference point outside the mind. We need that reference point that comes through meditation, contemplation, going into the depths of being, so that we can then bring that sense of presence, that steadiness into the moment, and help to transform the mind, give the mind a refuge, a place to come to rest, and then be able to walk in the world with greater ease and comfort, and show to the world there are other ways of being in the world that aren't filled with that reactivity, the fear, the aggression, all that comes from that. That other reference point, that comes through knowing the truth of who we are and becoming established in that more and more, and making use of practices like contemplation and mantra and meditation to make sure we're invoking that experience over and over throughout the day. So this is titled, "And the One Spoke." And the One spoke, saying, "If you want to know who you are, I will show you who I truly am. Behold the earth, the ground of your existence. I became earth, all elements and forms I am. Behold water, life's blood. I became water, all that flows I am. Behold fire, living flame of all life. I became fire, dancing, illuminating, warming, transmuting, light and life of the universe I am. Behold air, uplifting, carrying, dispersing. I became air, wind and storm, breath of life I am. Behold space, embracing and penetrating, atoms to galaxies. I became space, tenderly holding all my creation. Nothing and no one is ever left out. Boundless heart of love, infinitely spacious, I am. Behold mind, a ray of my consciousness. I became mind continuously moving, seeking to know, to taste, to smell, to touch, to hear, to see. All I've become. Soul knower I am. Behold emptiness, the magnificent black void. I became emptiness, womb and tomb, Bindu, portal between the finite and the infinite, between the ephemeral and the eternal, cause of all causes I am. Behold pure being, about which nothing can be said, not even by me. Pass through the portal and revel in knowing you are the one. You are the one. You are the one who's become all this. The portal, oh, that's the Bindu in the center of Kali, the Mahakali Yantra. The Bindu that appears in the symbol for Om, the Devanagari script of Om. That Bindu is the portal. That's the portal, womb and tomb. It gives birth to all, that absorbs all as it dissolves, that removes the veil of form, and also creates the veil of form. That's what we're coming to know. That's what we pass through in meditation, because that poem was pointing to really, what happens as the power of consciousness moves up through what's symbolically represented as the chakras of all those different elements. That starts out with earth, the ground of being, moves up to water, then fire, then air, then space, then mind, then the void. The void that's the imposition of I am not the infinite, but the finite has yet to arise. In that in-between state, that liminal state, there's a void, a black void. That's deep sleep state, where the imposition of I am not the infinite has happened. So the light of universal consciousness isn't illuminating our experience, but also the light of our individual mind isn't fully present. So it looks like it's just a black void. So all those different levels of consciousness, they reside within us. The centers of that, the ways of knowing that, the channel of wisdom and consciousness that moves through those and illuminates that we call the subtle body, that we call the Sushumna, that we call the power of consciousness rising and moving through that, illuminating them, setting us free from each level of bondage, that power known as Kundalini Shakti. That's all who we are. That's all that revels in having created all this. That consciousness itself, the truth of who we are, isn't bound by the creation. The mind is what's bound by that. That's the instrument that was created by the infinite to know the finite. And then ultimately to be able to be empowered to both know what it is to be the individual mind and to experience what it is to be finite and to move around in a finite world, at the same time knowing infinitude of being. The rapturous state of pure awareness. That's what's been called Sahaja Samadhi, living Samadhi. The Samadhi that doesn't depend on eyes open, eyes closed, a particular practice. It's the state of the truth of who you are. So it's not created by practices. The practices, they help us separate out consciousness from being automatically identified with the instrument of the mind and body, the different layers of consciousness associated with those sort of elemental forms, so that we can come to know the infinitude of pure being. That's what's referred to, in fact, by the name Shiva. Shiva means the auspicious one, the infinite one, the boundlessness of being. That consciousness is the root of who we are, and the root of what becomes the finite universe. So the practices are really aimed at bringing us home to knowing that directly. So that can then inform our lives. And it gives us a very different and an empowered stance to walk through the fires of the world, to deal with what's going on. Because then we're seeing that, what's unfolding in the world is the unfolding of this root ignorance. People not knowing the truth of who they are, and then scrambling about, trying to take from one another to fill an emptiness that can only be filled by knowing the divine as one's own self. And so people can amass more and more and more and be, more and more empty because they're more and more identified with form. And the very nature of form is emptiness. So by being empowered through, direct knowing, true knowing, that's what allows us to stand in the world and look through the eyes of our boundless heart of awareness with the boundless love, the equanimity, the clarity of seeing the truth and the way forward in the moment that is illuminated by that truth. So that's why we do these practices and do the contemplations and keep coming back to that over and over throughout the day. And so a practice like the use of mantra, of Om Namah Shivaya, that is an invocation of that sublime state, that is actually the sound form of that consciousness itself, that wisdom state itself. And so if we become fully absorbed in mantra, we can then be taken by the vehicle of mantra into the state from which it arises. Ordinary thoughts, they keep us in the ordinary mind and the states of ordinary mind. So this is why mantra, and a great mantra, a Maha Mantra like Om Namah Shivaya, revered for countless centuries, because it's a vehicle for direct knowing. It's a vehicle for complete transformation. So we want to take refuge in it over and over and over throughout the day, in practice times, but even in the background, doing a practice called japa, where you're just repeating Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, as you go about doing tasks. If the mind really needs to focus on something, then the mantra may fall away for that bit of time. But then as soon as there's space, we bring it back, and with the awareness of, I am that. And the one spoke, saying, you are that. That's the truth of who you are. You are that Shiva consciousness. You are that source. You are that Tatvam Asi, one of the Mahavakyas from the Upanishads. So we keep coming back to that awareness and making use of this vibration, this throb, we call mantra, because it's a tuning fork. And it helps tune up the body, it helps tune up the mind, and bring us into congruence with what our true and eternal nature is. So we're going to be chanting Om Namah Shivaya in a few minutes. But first I wanted to read another piece from Oh My Beloved here. This one is called, O Weary Soul. My body's dead. My memory's erased. My Lord's name is all that's left, says Kabir. Kabir is a great poet saint. O weary soul, take refuge in the name. Shiva, Shiva, Mahadev, Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. O ocean of mercy, O infinite expanse of all-embracing love, O boundless sea of rapturous ecstasy, you bestow your grace on those wandering in the liminal grounds of death and sacrifice. Having nothing left to lose, they are ripe for your gift, the ultimate disillusionment. Now giver, gift, and receiver merge in the bindu of your beloved. Nothing remains but the whispered throb of your name. Shiva, Shiva, Shiva. So when we come home to that, we can know that boundlessness of being, who we are beyond what we're very familiar with in terms of being identified with a mind and a body and a personality and all the things that came with it in this lifetime, all the conditioning and all those patterns. The freedom from that lies in knowing the truth of who we are. That was never bound, never conditioned. Limitations can never be imposed on it. Your boundless nature has been boundlessly free for eternity and continues that way. That's what we're coming home to, that refuge. Without knowing that, we are automatically being identified with mind and body and flailing about in that pain and suffering. And as we flail about in pain and suffering, we inflict pain and suffering on others. We see that in the world. The entire world is a drama of just that. So to get free of it, we have to go beyond the confines of the ordinary mind and go beyond the limitations of our ordinary sense of identity and what we've become identified with, what we were conditioned to be identified with growing up in our culture and our religions and economic systems, everything. They're all ways of creating limited conditioned identities. So the radical freedom that the great traditions, the great meditative traditions invite us to know are completely outside the realm of the ordinary mind. But by coming into contact with that, by getting to know that in stillness, in more silence, in just quiet reflection and leading to the stillness of meditation, then even that ordinary sense of self is transformed. It comes into right relationship with the infinitude of being, the right relationship to the divine within. That right relationship is to be the knower, the lover, the servant. That's what we're capable of. And then walking that into the world to help all beings know that and become free in that. And then be able to revel in that. And then have the vision that says, in this world, there's enough for all of us to flourish together. We can live and create a world, economics, political, governmental institutions, everything that would reflect that highest truth, that there is enough for all of us to flourish together and give expression to our boundless love, creativity, wisdom, and presence. So, coming home to the self, we're empowered to live that and know that more and more fully. So what we're going to do now is chant this great mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, for a few minutes, and then just sit in the stillness, in the stillness of meditation, where if the mind moves, let it move with Om Namah Shivaya. Whether you're saying it quickly or slowly, doesn't matter. Sometimes the mind is fast and it's going Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And sometimes it's going very slow and it's going Om Namah as the breath comes in Shivaya as the breath goes out. And then finally at some point, mind and mantra merge in stillness. Rest in the stillness. The mind moves again. Let it move with mantra. But delight in the stillness. The stillness out of which mantra arises and dissolves. The stillness out of which the mind arises and dissolves. The stillness out of which the body arises and dissolves. The stillness, the bindu, the portal. That takes us into that direct knowing. Passing through the portal. Passing through the portal, we shed all limited identities to know the infinitude of being. So, Om Namah Shivaya. I bow to the infinite. I bow to the auspicious one that permeates all that is all that is. Om Namah Shivaya. We'll chant that for a few minutes and then sit in stillness. Om Namah Shivaya. 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 May we end with this prayer, and may all our practices truly benefit everyone. May all beings know complete freedom from suffering and complete freedom from all the causes of suffering. And so may the merit of our practices go to benefit all in becoming free. Namaste. Now we take refuge. Take refuge in mantra. Take refuge in the source of mantra, the pure throb of being, the state of consciousness beyond the mind, but it envelops the mind, gives birth to the mind and all its thoughts and all its perceptions. So when we come home to the truth of who we are, it allows us to see all that is from a completely different perspective, a perspective of radical freedom, of boundless compassion, of all-embracing love, the truth of who we are, the truth of the essence of all being, all reality. So we want to know that, live in that state of radical freedom, and invite all to know that, to be free of suffering. Another gift from, oh my beloved, sweet melody. The song of songs, sweet melody, found me this morning, dissolving me in her embrace. Her throbbing pulse rippling out as all creation, the carrier wave of being, consciousness, loving bliss. Continuously birthing light and darkness, forms dancing in spacious emptiness. Infinite vibrations, each a universe, all throbbing as her, as you, as me, all in all. Song within songs, within songs. Sweet Gita, your living presence delighting in simply being, being every living form. Living galaxies, living rocks, living waters, living spirits, living creatures, living, throbbing, pulsing, singing the eternal song of being, becoming, loving, dissolving, birthing it all through ecstasy and pain, through the wild, rapturous movement only an exploding star can express, and through unfathomable, all-enveloping stillness. She, we, hold all that in a small corner of our vastness. Time dissolves. Our song continues, harmonies and dissonances arising from our one being, the pulse of our heart, the rhythm of our breath, emerging from sweet melody, today, tomorrow, for all eternity. That's what the power of mantra, the root power of consciousness, empowers us to see, to know, to participate in that grandeur of all that is becoming and dissolving and becoming and dissolving, all the divine, at all times, in all places, the one. It's the truth of who we are. We come home to that. That's where we come to know radical freedom. So I want to thank you for being ones doing the practices and having the commitment to coming to know that in its fullness for yourself, and then walking it into your everyday lives for the benefit of all. So thank you. Bless you for all that you do in that way. So keep coming back to the truth of who you are. Keep taking refuge in the pulse of that truth, the throb of mantra that transforms each moment into being in the divine embrace. So, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.